Okay, going live. 3, 2, 1. We are live, Doc. We are live.
Good afternoon, guys. And guests, everybody.
Everyone, I'm sure it'll take a minute for people to log in and join the podcast, but we are back with another episode of the Coach Cast. We're going a little bit different direction. This is episode 23. We are discussing a little bit more on the hunting front. Bow hunting season has officially started, gentlemen, here in Pennsylvania. Started this past Saturday in a couple of wildlife management units. And I guess in the first weekend of October, it starts for the rest of us individuals. So we're talking ethical hunting practices. Doc, I know this one is one that has been on the discussion board. We just haven't had a chance to really put it to fruition. So you want to open us up with sort of the direction to go with this conversation?
Well, what got this started a few weeks ago was when we did our last shoot for the 3D season for our archery club that I belong to in Pennsylvania. You could sort of feel the shift in people as they were coming in and talking and signing up to shoot and so forth. That their attention was moving from target shooting to in 3D and competing to hunting, and this caused me to think that we should maybe direct our attention for a couple programs here in that area. And so a few weeks ago we got started off. It would have been before our Labor Day holiday here in the U.S. And we talked about basically the shift in practice. What should you be doing different? Using the bow you intend to hunt with, or bows sometimes, and how should you maybe practice a little different? And I'd like us to discover a few of those points, and then after we do that, to begin to look toward what many people call, and I certainly call, ethical hunting. And having been raised as a farm kid myself, we certainly slaughtered our animals and butchered and so forth. So we generally killed them to do that, because you can have a real wrestling match on your hand if you don't do that first when you're trying to eat them. And but we were very ethical about how we, even on the farm, how we put down our animals. Because that's just the way to be on the planet. So we felt, so we want to talk a little bit about that, how to get the right shot and so forth, and then possibly finish with safety in the woods. Know where you are, know where your hunting friends are if you're hunting with other people. Have equipment with you to get you in and out of the woods. If you were there last maybe January in the same spot, it looks very different now than it did then. It's still here in the Northeast, still in full foliage, and it's just a different place. And you really need to know your way around. But even the best persons can get themselves confused and get lost. And I know the situation a few years ago near a hunting camp that I was involved in, where not from our camp, but from another, 2 people got lost in the woods and they never did find them. Someday somebody will find bits and pieces, I suspect. So that's part of safe hunting. And then checking out your standing equipment. Is it a blind, or is it just a rock that you hide behind or something like that, or a tree stand? Make sure things are safe and ready for your hunt before you go out with a loaded gun or a nocked arrow. So this is what the program's about today. If you will, Larry, I'd like to just mention a few things about them. You gave many good points about changing your practice methodology as you prepare to hunt, and doing it differently than you would preparing or staying stealthy for target shooting or 3D.
Well, of course, target shooting practice takes a lot of shots at a lot of distances, and some of them quite long, out to 80 yards for field archery, 70 meters or 77 yards if you're shooting target archery. But the bow hunting here in Pennsylvania is different. So you're shooting, your shot selection, when we get to that topic, should be under 35 yards, really under 30 yards. That's the nature of our weapon. It's still a primitive weapon, so you've got to limit your distance. And I base that on my own skill level. I have fairly high skill level shooting yet, but it's 30 yards and under. I think I've killed one deer over 30 yards. And I just discipline myself to stay under 30. So my practice reflects that. I practice out to, I think my long pin is set at 44 yards. I have 3 pins, 22 yards, 33 yards, and 44 yards. And the one I'm looking to use is the 22-yard pin. And I set it at 22 so that I can aim at the middle of the paper plate and hit the paper plate anywhere from 5 yards back to 30 yards. So one pin aiming at the middle will stay on a paper plate. So that covers me then in misjudging yardage. So if I limit myself to under 30, I'm going to get a good hit. And I don't have to get real cute about guessing the yardage. Just, is it under 30? Yeah, put the pin in the middle of the rib cage and shoot. So my practice is like that. So, and now I'm practicing with broadheads, and I'm sighting in with broadheads because they will shoot different than field points. Even the mechanical heads, the blades that open, are balanced different and fly different than a field point. So you've got to sight in with those broadheads. So, and I use the fixed blade heads, replaceable fixed blades, and that gives me my best success killing deer. So my practice centers around that. So that's, that's a brief outline of what you need to practice, and then finish with single shot practice. So a good test for yourself is go to 25 yards, put up the paper plate, and shoot your broadhead. One shot. And you need to be hitting that single shot, cold, without a warm-up, because that reproduces the conditions you'll have when you're out in your hunting blind or the tree stand. Yeah, you get it one shot, it's cold, no warm-up, and are you able to hit it? So if you aren't, then you or your bow or both need a little work.
I switched bows a few weeks ago, Larry, but because I work from home during the day, I've started doing that every morning, and then throughout the day I've been doing it. And I mean, it's on. Sometimes my first shot is my best shot. But I set my traditional bow. So for those of you who are watching this, I hunt with a traditional bow, 640 grain arrow, my point on distance. So I set it up so, because I'm an aimer, I'm not shooting instinctive. I gap shoot off distances, but my point on. So the point of my arrow is in the middle of the body is 25 yards. So from roughly 15 to 33 yards, the point of my arrow in relationship to the body is going to put me where I need to be. I have, unless I misjudge the distance and I aim too high, judging by whitetails and how often they duck, a probably pretty solid opportunity that no matter what happens, that's going to be a successful shot. Especially 25 yards and in, 30 yards and in. I probably won't shoot much more than 30 yards because, like, for me, a 30-yard traditional shot is probably for me like a 50 or 60-yard compound shot.
Yeah,
has to be perfect condition.
and the speed of sound is against you
Mhm.
when you get over 30 yards.
Yep.
At 40 yards, it takes sound only about a second to get there. It's traveling at 1,126 feet a second. Sound is
Right.
and so, but it takes your arrow maybe. Well, takes the sound about 1/10 of a second. Takes the arrow 4 to 5/10 of a second to get 40 yards.
Right.
Well, the deer has time to react. And like you said, their reaction is drop.
Yeah.
They drop low to load their legs. They're loading their leg muscles. And then they spring away.
Yeah.
So you're out on the time thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially shooting a traditional bow at like 45 pounds on my fingers with a 600 plus grain arrow. It's not moving quick, but it is super quiet. It's much more quiet than any other bow I've ever shot. It's a Black Widow ironwood. It's just so quiet, so smooth, but it's a wood bow, and it's definitely not as accurate as my bear bow ILF rig, but that's part of the challenge, right? So my effective distance with my ILF hunting bow was probably 40, 44, easily keep all the arrows within a pie plate without a doubt. That was just incredibly accurate. But shooting with a wood bow and stuff, it's definitely you have to set yourself up for success. So it's the same as your gaps for your pins with setting up your pins for 22 to 33 or 35 or 44 for a long pin, whatever your gap is that puts you on the body. Put the pin on the body and it puts you in the area. You have a better chance of having a good shot on a poorly judged animal, with the proper gap. So, but yeah, I've been doing that every day. This morning I killed both deer targets that were in my yard. So
yeah,
I'm going in this direction.
When's the butchering start?
Yeah, well,
tonight.
It's gonna take really, really bland. A little bit like
Is there any
foam.
blood trail on that?
Yeah, no blood.
Yeah. Oh, I missed practice this past week. Too much activity with the twins.
Oh,
And our daughter-in-law needed help. So we were on duty a lot. And so that complicated the rest of my day. We had spent evenings helping with the twins. So and some other meetings and things. Yeah. So I got to get on my practice regimen today, which I will be doing. Yeah.
all right.
Well, one thing I'd like to put in here that I knew about but rediscovered the other day. I had been out shooting, and I trained for hunting with both bows. They're both meaning I have a raft of traditional bows I use, but I shoot those all about the same. So I was training with that bow that I've chosen for this year, and also my compound. And so I shot a number of shots, had the time to do it and so forth. But this is also the season, and this is something to keep in mind, because there's always sort of contingencies that often we can forget. And so this program is a great way to remind ourselves of these. For me, fall is always one of my happiest seasons, because that was a very happy time for farmers years ago, and bringing in the crops and getting ready to hunt and other things to do in the fall, and the beauty of the fall season and so forth. But for some of us who have been blessed with reactivity to pollen, it's a fun time, but it's also time, as you can hear if you've heard me before on this. I'm all plugged up today with the pollen. We have a farm show quality crop of ragweed in the area this year, because we've had a fair amount of rain, and that's probably one of the worst things that bothers me. Is I typically take an antihistamine daily as part of my regimen of trying to control my allergies. You would never know. You would think I was born in a bottle rather than a farm, but never developed a lot of resistance to this stuff. But I've been on in treatment with a very good doctor who really knows his way around these things. So when the season for the pollens comes, then I double the dose of the antihistamine instead of just taking one in the evening, take one in the evening, one in the morning. Well, that also doubles the amount of dehydration. And you need to increase your water intake at least by a third while you're doing that, or it's going to affect your joints and your muscles. And I hadn't thought of that. And the other day when I got up after shooting a number of shots, having been out with friends and we were practicing, next morning I got up, I felt like I'd been in a fight. I mean, every muscle in my body hurt. So it's just something to keep in mind if you do have a reactivity to allergies and you're on antihistamines, that you need to, as it's draining off the fluids in your body to keep you from having an allergic reaction to whatever, you need to increase your intake of water. And I would say at least by a third. And some people that drink a fair amount of water, you might as well just put a garden hose in your mouth and walk around, I guess. But I know our friend Frank here puts a lot of water down every day, which is a very healthy thing to do. So I think the other thing we ought to talk about is if you have permanent hunting equipment in the areas where you hunt, a stand or stands. Some people have numerous locations where they keep it, and they're in a situation perhaps they own the land or where they can keep a stand up. Make sure you get out and check these things before you're going to hunt, even if it's during the hunting season. Go out at a non-hunting time and make sure that things are safe.
Yeah.
I know Larry does that on a regular basis on his own property, where he has a number of different stands. It could avoid a major accident that could be a very permanent kind of accident.
I just pulled one this weekend. I had a hang-on stand. Just to check all the steps, pulled everything, pulled the steps. And I'm glad I did, because the vinyl strap, or yeah, what's that called? It's not vinyl. Oh my gosh, the webbing,
Nylon.
the
Web.
nylon
Web strap.
one of the steps was eaten through lower to the ground. And, while it was at least a lower one, imagine if, that was the strap on my tree stand or something, and I go to stand on that thing and boom, I always
Take an elevator.
Yeah. I always wear a harness, which every bow hunter should absolutely positively do, unless you wear a saddle, which I started hunting with a saddle last year, and I will probably hunt with my saddle more this year than I will hunt out of a tree stand, because it's, if you have the physical capability of wearing one and hanging in a tree, for especially because I hunt a lot of public land when I hunt by myself, it's the way to go. It's just so easy, quiet, but either way, make sure you're strapped in. And that's why, like Doc was saying about checking those stands, those permanent fixtures, or even like wooden built stands, make sure that you're at least getting eyes on them before the first day of the season. Don't wait until the season's there and you're walking up
Oh,
in the
yeah.
park for the first
Yeah.
time.
Well, Doc made a good point a while ago. I guess we were talking before this started, before we went live, about all the rain we've had here in Pennsylvania this year.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of rain. Well, that pushes tree growth. So, when you cut a tree and count the rings, you'll notice that they aren't all spaced the same. So we're making a wider ring this year. So the trees are growing a lot. And so that means the circumference is changing, bulging out. And well, that can put a strap under high stress. And your extra little weight could cause it to break. Just when you don't want it, then you're on an elevator again.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've got to get out and check. I checked one stand. No, I guess I just checked the trail into it last week when I was cutting brush. But I've got to get to all the stands now this week and check straps. We totally rebuilt my two best ones 2 years ago. But still, I got to check the straps, even though we put new straps and things on those and painted them. And I'm doing ladder stands. Yeah, I'm not in, I used to do a climber.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of stick ladders with hang-ons, but Doc and I need to be on ladder stands. That's just the way it is. Yeah, with a lifeline.
Lifeline that runs from above your head standing in the stand
Yep.
all the way to the ground.
Right.
And those
So-
have to be pulled. Those have to be pulled every year, as they should be anyways, because the mice will destroy those nylon safety
Go
ropes.
check. And my son bought one, I think we have a couple of them that have that reflective thread in them. And boy, going into that, it's not easy. It's not hard to miss that stand. I mean, it's not hard to see the stand. It's that rope really stands out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, under red light too. Like you can wear the red light, which is non-disruptive to the animals. And that thing, that rope will just, it's literally like glows.
Oh
in the
yeah.
light. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. First time I saw one of those ropes was in Kansas. And I was going in to the stand we put up the day before. I didn't know it had this thread in it.
Yeah.
And man, from 150 yards away, I'm shining the light and
What the heck is that?
This looks like a neon sign in there.
Oh, that's funny.
I thought, wow, what the heck is that?
That's funny.
Really didn't know what it was at first.
Yeah, I could see it. That'd really freak you out a little bit. Walking, I don't care how old you are, how many people you're with.
Yeah, that somebody was in there with
it's still weird.
neon lights. But yeah, got to check them out. So that's on my list this week. Checked game cameras yesterday. Got both hunting bows ready, shooting. And so now it's just a matter of checking stands. And then there's going to be some brush to cut too. So not a lot, but there's going to be some.
Yeah.
Now I have to get a golf cart, I think, so Doc can take the electric golf cart up to the top of the hill to get to the stand that he uses.
My goodness, I will look forward to that. Does it have clubs in it too? If I hit a slow time, I can go down and drive a few balls into the woods.
Yeah, yeah.
Another important point I want to make is you really know your location. Have others know where you are. And if for some reason you don't show up, at least somebody knows other than people hunting with you where you are and where you intend to be, in case something should happen, so you can be found. Or if you get disoriented, you could maybe make a call, and people could help find you. And these things happen. Our friend Frank here had an experience a couple of weekends ago. I don't think people were hunting, but they were just out walking in a state forest, and
Yeah.
apparently became disoriented. Were they new to the area, or they knew where they were?
So
Okay.
they were college students. One was from the area, but not an outdoors oriented person. The other one was from out of the area. They started clear on the other side of the mountain and made it and got up to the top of the mountain, got turned around, was disoriented. It was close to dark. So the male of the group told the girl, I won't call it girlfriend, the girl and the dog stayed put, called 911. The acquaintance, the male acquaintance, went to go get the car, but he went the wrong way and went down the wrong side of the mountain. So the car was clear over the entire side of the mountain on the other side, eventually making it back toward that direction, but in a roundabout way. And we were called out. We were out till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning looking for this individual. And it happened to be on hunting ground that I'm familiar with and I've walked through. And just to piggyback off of that, when you are going out, like I hunt by myself when I hunt public land, usually the spots that I have reserved for my wife and my son are spots that are easy to get to, probably a little bit more ample on the deer sightings. And I reserve those spots, the better spots for them. When I hunt by myself, I hunt public land most of the time. And I hunt with a tree saddle or from the ground typically now. I used to hunt, would carry a hang on if I was hunting an area all year long. But so when I go out, similar to when we went out for this rescue call, I use Onyx maps on my phone to track my location, especially in foreign territory, like if I'm in an area that I'm not familiar with. And I also, like if I'm hunting by myself and I know I'm going to be a mile, 2 miles back in state game lands, I share my location with my wife on my phone, just in case, because you just never know. Like she doesn't hear anything back. I'm not back by 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. She has the ability to say, well, here, this shows his last location. It's a small thing to do, but it's just a safety thing. I'm up, there's rattlesnakes all over the place. There's, you never know what you're going to run into on public lands. I do carry with me, I always carry a 9mm. So like, I don't, just in case, like I said, there's some crazy stuff that happens in public land. And when I was saying the doc and you guys earlier on that rescue call, me and another guy from the fire department took a UTV back this trail that I'm familiar with because it's my hunting ground. And and I said we were both walking back this trail, going to the last pin location of the kid that was lost. And I said to him, I was like, I don't care how old you get or how many people you're with, walking in the middle of the woods, hundreds and hundreds of yards away from the closest road or house in the middle of the dark is still weird. I don't care who you are. It's still weird. But and they got turned around. They were, they left they started their hike at 4:30 p.m. Now think about that. It's middle of September, 4:30 p.m. hike. You need to have some kind of sense about you when you are going out on
Yeah.
hunt, especially like how far are you going to go? How long did it take you to get there? And you can look at Hunt Stand, Onyx Maps, download multiple apps to tell you when it's going to get dark. So you have the time to get back. I mean,
Yeah.
it's different when you walk out the back of your yard, you go out into the hedgerow of the field and you're just like climbing up in a stand and you're right there. I get it. You know, maybe you don't have to be quite as cautious about it, but if you are putting in time or going, you know, a couple 100 yards away from the house or whatever, you know, a lot can happen in that short space. It's like car accidents. Car accidents happen within a couple miles of your house because you get complacent because you know the roads and you know the traffic patterns, and it just takes one mistake for things to go bad.
Well, overconfidence.
Yep. And hunting's the same way. It's the exact same way. So, but yeah, that's what happened with us, and that's a situation that we probably, my fire department, we're fire rescue, so we get called for, I would say, a dozen search and rescues throughout the year because we're near Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and it's a huge swath of land that's frequented by the Appalachian Trail and hikers in general, and hunters. And you know, it's just something we see all the time are people that, you know, broken ankles, broken femurs, fallen and hit their head, went unconscious, tree stands, UTV and ATV accidents, hunters going to and from their stand on ATVs without a helmet. I mean, everything. We've been dispatched for everything. And you know, I've hunted. I don't hunt with a climber anymore because I almost fell out of a tree with one. The bottom section just about fell to the bottom, and I just finally said, no, I'm good. I don't need that unknowingness if that thing's gonna stick to the tree or not. I'd rather hunt with ladders with a lineman's rope and climb up a ladder, or you know, or even sit in my saddle because I'm attached to the tree. But so that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, not hard to get turned around. I did it out in Kansas. Put up a stand one afternoon, hunted it, came out at dark. Next morning, I went back in the dark, got turned around just a little off, came out on the trail that, you know, logging trail. And I thought, oh man, how'd I do that? So I went back to my starting place again, did it again. Did it just twice. So then I got my compass out.
Oh.
By then it was getting daylight, so I could see my way to get to this tree stand.
Oh yeah, I've done that before too. Yeah. Yeah, where you walk toward where you thought that, you know, the tree stand is there, you follow, but you just get a little bit disoriented, like I cannot find it, and you're within 20 yards of it probably.
Oh yeah.
But I swore I walked in the exact same trail.
Right.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
So what else do you want to talk about, Doc?
Well, if you're fortunate enough to have this incredible buck come to a range that you feel comfortable in taking a shot, and you do, and you know you hit the animal, the excitement of the moment is to get down on your stand or come from behind the tree where you were hiding or in a blind and begin to look for the animal. And I had the occasion to help a young fellow start the hunt a few years ago. I mean, he was already in his early 40s, but he had never hunted before. Very able shot and so forth, and took him to a place in West Virginia where I'm part of a hunting lodge, or was then. and gave him very clear instructions as to what to do. And if you get a shot, I told him probably when the shot would be, what the deer would be doing, and probably what it would be eating. Actually, he said it was like being in a movie. It all happened the way I told him, because I knew the deer were there and their habits, and that when he shot, to try to point out for himself the location where he believed that that arrow would be, in mentally at least mark a tree, a bush, or something like that, but stay in the stand. And I was going to be nearby, and I would come over in time, and we would look for the deer. And I said, even if you can see the deer, because he had never approached a wounded animal before, don't approach it until I'm with you. And he followed the rules. It was really good. And I heard the bow go, and as I was approaching about 20 minutes later, I waited too, so we wouldn't push anything. I actually saw the deer laying where it was. It seemed, from the binoculars, I could tell it was probably dead. And the first, he came down out of the stand when I approached, and right away he wanted to go over to where he thought the deer was too, which that's where it was. But I said, what are you supposed to do first? Follow up, try to find my arrow and find the blood trail, and then follow the trail. Because if an animal is still alive, when you start your approach, it can get up and go again. And so give it time to meet its demise. So those are things just to keep in mind. And I know with Frank, he and his son Evan had a very interesting experience a year or two ago. Of Evan shot a deer, and I forget all the circumstances, but I know you and your son looked for that deer for a number of days until you found that the meat was no longer good. But
Yeah.
that was a worthy experience, I assume.
Well, it was a lesson learned for him for sure. So he has shot deer before, but never with a vertical compound, only with a rifle at 9, crossbow at 10 or 11. I think he was 11. And then he has hunted with his compound now since he was 13 at the time. So for 2 years before getting a chance to shoot one. Now he had plenty of small yearlings and younger does and stuff like that within shooting range that he drew back on purposefully and aimed, but he wasn't shooting it because he was holding out for a buck. So this was towards the end of the season, maybe the last week. And right at daylight, or right like 5 minutes shooting time left or so, a buck came out and started pushing does 25 yards out in the food plot where he's sitting in a blind. And it's a big blind. It's not like a little one. So like he's got lots of room to shoot. You're not cramped or anything. And this buck comes out. He stops 25 yards, makes a shot. It was a little bit back, so it was the right angle. He was he wasn't technically, he was quartered away, but only because of where he stopped. He was standing broadside, just he was down a little bit, so it made it a quarter away shot, and he clipped the lung a little bit, but mostly liver. So we waited, and like I said, it was at last light, so we waited probably about 2 hours before we really pushed it all, just to look, follow up the blood trail. The mistake that we made is we found a puddle of deep dark blood. So that in case in point of why you check for the arrow and you check the blood trail before even though you think that animal crashed 40 yards away, but you can't see it. Check the arrow, look for bubbles, look at the color, check the smell of the arrow, so that you're not just blindly following this animal. If you see that it's deep dark liver blood, back out. Don't even go. look for this animal unless you like visually see that it's dead. There's probably a good chance if it's a liver shot, you're not going to see that animal lying dead. Back out and wait. We pushed a little bit too hard the first night. We didn't go too terribly far, but we got to the point where we lost some blood and we stopped. We should have waited and backed out. When we found that first puddle of red blood, we should just backed out and waited till the following day. I think my excitement, because it was my son's first buck, first deer of the compound,
Mhm.
fogged that judgment. That will never happen again. So we did back out then. After a while, my senses kind of came to me. I said, let's get out of here. I don't want to push anymore. Ended up coming back the next morning, found the blood, and there's a huge 100-yard wide and probably or 60-yard wide, 100-yard long section of pines, and the whole forest floor is pine needles. That's the direction that the buck went. Finding blood in pine needles is literally, it's more like finding blood in a bed of needles instead of a needle in a haystack, or it's next to impossible. And what it ultimately ended up happening is I talked to all of the landowners in the area, asked them to keep an eye out for this animal. I tried for probably about 2 or 3 days alone, with some help, and then eventually 2 weeks later, one of the landowners came across the deer. Ironically, not far from the highway. He went about 1.5 miles. So found the deer. He found the entrance and exit hole. And then what happened is the broadhead he was using did not have any bleeders on it. It was a 125 grain bear paw Yager broadhead, super, super, super sharp. The hole actually sealed up. So arrow went through, bled for about 50 yards. And then because the blades were super thin and they're super thin and really, really sharp, the hole actually just sealed right. It must have coagulated, or it just, because it was, it was the heart of the season, sealed right back up. The blood stopped. So, I mean, what are you going to do? You just kind of take one on the chin. He tagged the animal and has that memory and lesson learned. And we stayed after it. And again, it meant knocking on doors, or in my case, in this situation, sending text messages, because I happen to know all the people in the area. And he comes home from school one day and there the buck sits. And I said, hey, found your buck. And he got to take that, first trophy photo. That's really what happened. I mean, persistence is key, and making responsible decisions. Do I think that not pushing that animal after the first 2 hours, or did we push the animal? I don't know. I did find another area of blood where I think he stopped. But I don't know if that aided in him going so far or not. I personally think it did. And, that's the mistake that I made. So as a dad.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, you want to get the deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not my proudest moment as far as the decision making on my end, but one of my proudest moments ever hunting, watching your kid make a marginal, but it was a decent shot. I mean, it was right height, just 2 inches too far back.
Yeah.
The wait to
But
get
you
the
went,
right
you
shot
looked,
is
yeah.
possible.
What's that?
It's good to be able to wait. It's hard to do it though. I mean, I've been tempted many times to take a shot that I knew was probably not going to be a good outcome, and so far I've never taken one with a bow. I took a few with a rifle years ago.
Yeah.
But there's the possibility of hitting something with a rifle through difficult trees or branches. It depends on the rifle, but it's possible to do. But even there, it's I've always turned hunting into sort of a game. because of the places I hunted, I knew the land, knew the animals, and so forth, and you did a lot of scouting and pretty well knew what was there. And now with the advent a number of years ago, the game cameras, you can even do more of that.
Mhm.
See, you know, in some states they're being outlawed because they're believing that it's not fair chase, that you know where the animals are. I, I don't know my colleagues on here this morning would feel that way or not, but I, I, I think it's important to know what's there, and then to wait for the right animal. When I used to hunt in West Virginia, I would go a week or two before the season, before either the archery season or the rifle season, and just spend time in the woods. And I generally would find my buck, and I would hunt for that deer and pass others up, because that was fun for me to do.
Yeah.
If I needed meat, I knew where a grocery store was. You know, I could go get that. You know, but if I was starving, it might be another matter. But I don't know about you fellas if you hunt for a particular deer, but it makes it sort of into a more of a fun kind of thing in the game. And
I mean, I run cameras. I run cameras on public land, and I run cameras on private land. I think the key component for the cameras for me is I have the cell cams. My kid has the app on his phone, and it adds to his excitement and motivation to want to be out there.
yeah,
That's probably my biggest reason for having them. I do scout. I scout on foot. I scout on mountain bike. I will go out on foot and just from a distance observe, you know, where I know they're coming out at. I have an absolute giant of an 8-pointer that I'm probably going to chase. However, as I stated before we started recording, I shoot traditional, and the first legal buck that steps in front of me is getting walloped because I want to shoot my first deer with this buck. So I am not
I'm writing this down on the calendar, Doc. I'm making a
Okay.
note of this
because when I hunted
statement
with
from Frank.
compounds, every time I shot a compound buck, I wanted to shoot a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. And then, you know, my biggest to date Pennsylvania deer is 120-inch 7-pointer. He's huge. He's a giant 7-pointer. But I kept 2 years after that, I kept passing up buck, passing up buck, passing up buck. And I finally was like, you know, why am I doing this? I mean, it's fun, but it's not. I didn't, you know. And then when I started hunting traditional, I was like, okay, now the game has changed. It's get
Yeah.
close and
Yeah.
make a good shot, and you need to be a hell of a lot of a better shot with a trad bow than you do with a compound.
Yeah. Well, if you're trophy hunting in Pennsylvania, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. So and now, you know, hunting traditional, I think it's not that it's just a goal of mine to shoot one with a traditional bow.
Mhm.
That's you know, buck or doe, preferably both. And I pay attention to a lot more now because I have to get so much closer. And you know, I'm scouting more now than I used to because I used to have areas that I could go to and I knew I was going to see deer and they were going to be within 50 yards. And I was pretty comfortable shooting a deer at 50 yards as long as it was not alert and relatively quiet and I had a good shot. I had no problems doing that. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people have their opinions about it or whatever, but you know, it just now as a traditional hunter, like I'm really paying attention. My Onyx app from the game lands, both game lands and places that I hunt, it's littered with points of scrapes, active trails, trees that I would go up in my saddle. Like I have all sorts of stuff, you know, and that's the direction I think, you know, all hunters. I wish I would have taken that notion when I did hunt. I had more time and hunted with a compound, and I didn't. I was kind of complacent with. I got my stands. I know where I can go. I'm going to see deer. that was the approach that I took. I don't take that approach anymore.
Well, it's the difference between shooters and hunters, and there's nothing wrong with either.
Sure.
But it's a lot of fun to hunt and to learn about the animals.
Hmm.
When I was a young kid, I mean, my father got a deer almost every year. It's because he had a tremendous knack of being in the right place at the right time, and he was a very good shot.
My dad.
But for him to go out and hunt for a deer, we would have starved to death. I mean, and there was very little known about them then. I mean, the whole knowledge of the patterns of the whitetail, and then to learn the patterns of other animals, and that they are predictable and so forth. Now, some people think that's unethical, or that's not a fair chase. I don't think fair chase means to just you stumble across your quarry and get a shot at it. I think fair chase means that you're not trying to capture the animal in some way and choose.
I had thousands of pictures of deer on my property last year. I didn't kill one. I didn't get the shot, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And yeah, so all those pictures, that didn't do me a bit of good. So I was a vegetarian all winter.
No, I don't have any cameras out because I have no place to put them right now, but I used to have some, and some of my friends have some cameras out. We put out on a feed plot that we planted this a couple of years ago. We went to check the pictures one evening, and when we saw them on the screen and the camera before we unloaded the car, there was a bear. There was another bear, and so forth. So we unloaded the cars, and we discovered our first herd of black bears. There were 6 together within about a 40-yard circumference of the camera, feeding on the rye grass that was coming up through the clover and so forth. And then we found out later that the black bear, when we researched it a bit, before they're going to be hibernating, eat a lot of grass like dogs do, and it causes them to regurgitate and get rid of the worms and bots and so forth in their bodies. And especially for a gestating female, this guarantees her survival through the winter and delivery and the young. Otherwise, the bugs can literally kill them during their hibernation. And so we learned something about bear doing that. I'm not a bear hunter, but I had an opportunity a few years ago, and as I was pulling back, I said to myself, well, I don't want to shoot a bear.
I got bear.
Well, then the work begins.
I got bear.
I could have got that bear. So he was 17 yards.
Yeah.
Standing broadside, looking back at some guys walking through the woods. Perfect shot.
Ugh.
So what I did was I put the boat out and I said, "Have a good day, Mr. Bear." The hunters were a little upset about that.
I'll tell you what is also coming with me this year.
Mm-mm.
My DSLR is coming with me. I'm going to be taking pictures, and because situations like that, I had a bear last year climb up to the bottom of my tree stand. I think I talked about that on the podcast before.
Yeah.
And this is coming with me this year. I'm going to be, if I'm not shooting them with my bow, I'm shooting with my camera.
And that's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
So, all right, fellas, I think
And next week we hope to return to our subject from which we departed for just this brief interlude of hunting and safety in the woods. Back again for a short while, and hopefully a number of other people talking about the development of the healthy athlete and whose responsibility is it. And this all came out of some of the Olympic situations that we heard about and knew about this last year in Tokyo, and then to follow from that. And we hope to talk to a couple parents of one of the athletes and the athlete themselves, and just get their read on this. It's very, very, very important not only develop a skill to the point of being an elite quality athlete, but to stay healthy and not get hurt or damaged permanently for life. To have an activity that one could do for the rest of their lives and help that be part of your wellness regimen. So we return to that next week or so, and then off to other things.
Sounds like a plan.
But will do.
We'll see everybody on the next episode. Make sure you follow all of the audio version on our podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. And stay safe out there. Good luck out as your seasons begin. Same to you, gentlemen. Hopefully, the three of us can get a hunt together, and I can bring my camera gear, and we can actually video a hunt or two. That'd be fun.
Okay,
All right.
that'd be good.
All right.
Yeah.
I know.
Good luck, everybody.
I'm out. See ya.
Over and out. See ya.